Hi everybody, Campbell here from the Property Factory, and I'm doing an e-meeting or a digital meeting with the lovely Rachael Hurford from Max Property Management.
Good
Now,
morning.
I've known Rachael and worked with Rachael for 5 or 6 years. She's probably managing over 200 plus of our customers' assets, including me. She's looking after my properties. So welcome, Rachael, and thank you for making the time in these weird times. Nice to see you.
Hi there, great to see you too. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Thanks, okay. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to catch up with Rachael is she's at the coalface in inner city Christchurch, dealing with all of the properties that our clients purchase. And we've been getting a lot of questions regarding what's happening at the coalface. Are people losing jobs and not renting? Are people wanting to get out of leases? So just give us a feel sort of at the helicopter level, Rachael. Where is tenant demand at compared to a month or 2 months ago right now? Where do you see it?
Right. Well, the one bedroom market is pretty busy. We tenanted 4 properties on Wednesday, 2 days ago. And the 2 weeks prior to that, we tenanted another 1 bedroom apartment at 350 Colombo to an essential worker who had to get out of her bubble because that bubble included an elderly parent, and so we moved her in there. So particularly the inner city apartment market is quite vibrant at the moment. I just want to note that the 4 properties we tenanted this week are all virtual tenanting. My colleague Michelle and I never left our houses in the process. So yeah, the market is quite different. You're not getting foreign students and migrant workers coming in, but they typically weren't the inner city market. The inner city market is working professionals between the age of 25 and 40 who work in the city.
Okay, that's interesting. And look, we're gearing up our business with our people to do, government insisted distancing for inspections for valuers for people like yourselves. And you've been working around it through virtual letting. Wow, that's amazing. Because a lot of our clients need a valuer to get through, or they need a building inspector to get through. But you've been working around those level 4 rules, properly, and managed to still let properties. That's amazing. Well done, and great creativity to make that happen. So when we move to level 3 next week, where do you see demand picking up? Do you see?
Yeah, definitely. Sure, we've just tenanted 4 properties, but there are also as many, properties where people want to be able to do a physical walkthrough before they commit to a property. But yeah, the Colombo is proving to be extremely popular, and we wish we had some more listings there. We really like that location. It's close to the centre city. It's opposite that wonderful mall. You can walk into town, you can head for the hills if you want to. It's located on the south side of the city. It's on the side of Sydenham Primary School, and so it's centred around a green, and they've done a really good job of making that a really appealing location for people to live in.
No, and look, we've been involved in probably 4 or 5 complexes around Christchurch, and we still are in the CBD area or surrounding suburbs. And 350 has been very popular. And from a price and a yield point of view, it's one of the best we've seen for a long time. So, but so you don't see demand of tenants battening off, and because you've got ads on Trade Me right now looking for tenants, and are you saying that you've got more tenant demand than we've got available properties? Based on our selling progress.
Yeah, actually, yes. At 350 Colombo, we absolutely. Other apartment complexes, such as the new one on at 489 Selwyn Street, they all came. We've had 30, 40 apartments come online at once, and we've got about 12 of them. Well, we're managing about 12 of them, and we have tenanted 3 this week.
Great. So as new product comes on, you're getting tenants for them.
And
these are tenants moving out of older properties. What's the demand? Who's your profile? You sound like professionals working in the city.
Profile right now is people who've had to come back to New Zealand, have been working overseas, and are making Christchurch their home for the next 12 plus months. Younger people who have finished at university and are living with mum and dad and want to move into their own property. Price point for a 1-bedroom apartment is really appealing to people who been living at home, have coupled up with someone and want their own space. We typically rent a 1-bedroom at $350 Colombo between $395 and $405 per week, or a 2-bedroom at around $450. So they are easy, they are comfortable rental prices for your younger working people.
And when the complex is full, Rachel, do you think those rents will go up once you're only renting one at a time when people move out?
I think so. We see them sitting around $420.
Yeah.
That's where we think they'll sit.
So going back to that hot topic of where the tenants, it's interesting you're already dealing with tenants that have come back from overseas, but that does make sense. But if you get a gut feel from a total demand 6 weeks ago to total demand now, has it changed at all?
It's a little hard to tell because we're in level 4 lockdown, so we are just doing the best we can from our homes. But I would expect it won't have dropped off, not in that market. I think your room by room market won't be great, and your student accommodation won't be great, but they're typically older houses or purposely built room by rooms over close to the university.
And what about the Airbnb market? Now, we don't typically promote that. We like our customers to be in long-term leases with tenants, whether it's furnished or unfurnished. But do you do much in the Airbnb market? And have you seen that change?
Yeah, we have about a dozen properties that are Airbnbs, and absolutely. That market is going to be very different. We expect to see at least 50% of ours stay as Airbnb and accommodate the domestic market. We accommodate a lot of people who travel for work, and that is probably going to pick up again. But the other 50% of properties we've moved to long-term furnished. Christchurch is a little bit different from places like Queenstown and Rotorua that are very tourist dependent. The Christchurch Airbnb market, from our perspective, for our properties we have managed, is more your Kiwis on holiday for a week, or coming to Christchurch for a wedding for the weekend, or working people who travel, who have regular bookings with us.
Well, that used to be me when I lived in the Wellington region.
That's right.
I was down every 2 weeks.
Yes. You were our Airbnb guest, weren't you, for quite a long time?
You looked after me, yes. You did look after me a number of times. In fact, even last minute notice when I would ring saying, I need a place tonight, please.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So you're saying not a lot of change from a tenant demand. I guess we, like you, I mean, a lot of your stock is new that we're selling and other companies are selling. But what you're saying is that tenant market hasn't changed. And I guess that's probably reflective of, you're saying that there are people working in the CBD. Construction starts up next week again. And I guess every time a new building completes in Christchurch, that's a whole lot of new people who need to work in that building, who probably want to live closer to that building so that they're not having big, long commutes to work. Is that what, are you seeing that when new buildings are finished, like the library or, with the convention centre coming up?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, you probably don't know where everybody's coming from, but when you're doing your references and checks, because you guys do a thorough vetting of tenants. They're like what you're saying, their place of work is in the city. But from a construction point of view, knowing what's going on in the city, there's a lot of building. The Spark building, for example, right in the middle of town. That is, I think it's finished now. I mean, gosh knows how many jobs are in that building. So that's our, apparently there's 7,000 residents in the city at the moment, and that's forecast to go to 20.
Isn't that fantastic? And the city's really becoming quite vibrant. It's really quite changed from how it was post-earthquake. Lots of new buildings, lots of places to eat.
So, I think in terms of the economic story of Christchurch has been solid for a long time, and I compare it to Wellington in the 2013 onwards. There was a lot of people wanting to go there for the work because the incomes in Wellington were high, and accommodation there hasn't changed. In fact, supply is much, much lower than demand still to this day. And I see that happening in Christchurch because the new stock, the new properties that are being built by the various developers in the city is sought after by those young tenants that want double glazed, brand new.
It is, and the new stock is beautiful. It's really appealing. It's I keep mentioning 350 Colombo, but it's our favourite. They're beautiful high ceilings, great acoustic rating, fabulously designed kitchens, beautiful bathrooms. It's really appealing to people who don't want cold and old. They want to be near the city. They don't want to have to pay a lot of rent, so it's affordable. And One Central would be the same, and Williamstock too. I mean, it's all beautifully built and really occupant friendly.
No, and that's what we're hearing from landlords who are looking after you, or who own the properties that you're letting. We're hearing the same feedback from them. And, we've analysed it through to the nth degree. And if you look at the workers, there's a lot of government workers in Christchurch. There's a lot of health workers in Christchurch. And these corporations and companies like Spark that are building their new offices in the CBD, their staff want to live close to where they work. So we see this continuing, and that for me it's deja vu to Wellington back in the early 2000s when the city had a few residents, whereas now Wellington is full of apartments, and it's got a huge urban population in the city, resident population in the city. So we don't see a lot of change, and I guess it'll be interesting once we can all transact again, because even in lockdown, you've managed to rent 4, 5, 6 properties. The great news for our industry is that we can all operate again outside of our homes. We can with rules. So it's going to be easier for tenants to go and look at properties. It's going to be easier for valuers to get through properties and building inspectors to get through these properties. So we're expecting a lot more activity from next week, and sounds like you agree with that. Yes.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, and I think we're also going to see a bit of a backlog because we've got people who probably wanted to move 4 or 5 weeks ago and haven't. So I would think that we won't have a lot of availability by the beginning of May.
It's one of the things we press to our Auckland investors, because Auckland in the winter is nowhere near as cold as Wellington, Christchurch or Central Otago. But there is always an exodus of people in cold and old into new every winter. So I guess you're right, we're 6 weeks behind now on that. So I'd imagine you'll be pretty busy because it's getting colder as we get closer to May.
Yeah, and cold and old is not so popular anymore. Heating is really expensive. People would rather have a low electricity bill and put that money into a slightly higher rent. Not that the apartments, one or a 2 bedroom apartment is actually cheaper than a older standalone house.
No, well, I guess it's interesting. I mean, we've been doing walks every day with the dogs and the family in our little bubble. And I guess we've been focusing on apartments and townhouses, 1 and 2 bedrooms. That demographic is, as you described, professional workers in the city. We still see student flats on our walks. We still see big old houses being rented on our walks. But as you pointed out, they're much more expensive to heat and to run than small. And I guess for me, I have seen it. I've seen it in Wellington. I've seen it in Auckland. And if you go pre-earthquake, there wasn't a lot of new accommodation in the city. It was all old.
No, there really wasn't. And your younger people were more likely to be in flatmate situations. So a 4-bedroom house with potentially eight people living in it. So those couples have moved to the inner city apartments. Typically, a heating bill and electricity bill in a 1-bedroom apartment would be $80 to $100 a month, versus heating an older house in Christchurch in winter $300, $400, $500 a month.
Yeah, and this is real, and it's a whole shift of living culture, because these properties weren't infill housing, the Auckland Unitary Plan up in Auckland, and special housing area rules that were put in place for Central Otago when there was so much demand for new housing, and just the gentrification of older suburbs. You walk around, drive around, and they're all full. People want to live in newer housing because it's cheaper to live and it's more comfortable to live. Who wouldn't want a newer car versus an old if it's the same price or fractionally more as a comparison? So I don't even think we're at that's why for me, even though this COVID-19 situation has had a massive impact on some industries like tourism, our target market for investors, we're at the cheaper end of the product. Tenants, we're at the top end of the product, and we've got professional tenants that in government jobs or solid jobs in the corporate sector, or health or teaching. We've analysed this until we've been blue in the face, thinking what could go wrong through this. And the global financial crisis was a massive impact on our industry, whereas we don't see a lot of impact on it. So it's just good to talk to people like yourselves. Yeah. We don't think there's going to be much change.
No, I really don't think there will be. Like I said before, there'll be change in student accommodation near the university, and there'll be change in room-by-room lets, because that was the migrant market. But I think it's status quo for your inner city apartments. And actually, I think you'll see a boost in demand for inner city apartments because of returning Kiwis. People who have been working overseas and, hey, they're back in New Zealand for a year or two. They don't want to live with mum and dad, so they move into the city.
No, it's the same. It's the same what we're hearing from other sources. So, no, thanks, Rachael. I really appreciate you making the time, and it'll be good when we can all get out and say hello from 2 meters.
Yes.
It's comforting to hear, because at the end of the day, our customers in Wellington or Auckland or even Christchurch, there's a lot of unknowns. So just the fact that you've rented that many properties in a period where it's been locked. We're really pleased with that too. So so now really what we've got is a handful of 1-bedroom apartments to fill, and then we need some more stock, please, Campbell. I really think it's I don't see any negatives out of this, and I think it's great that we're stamping out COVID-19 so we can all get back to business. No, I agree. All right. Well, look, thanks, Rachael. You have a great Anzac weekend, and I look forward to catching up. And I'm sure we'll see each other at the at 2 meters plus distance when we're bringing some new purchases through, and you're showing to tenants.
Okay.
Thanks, Rachael. Have a great weekend.
Yep. Okay. Bye.